Tonight on Bridge City News, the owner of a Lethbridge theater is still debating whether or not to show the controversial pro-life movie Unplanned. Some nostalgia is returning to High River in the form of a drive-in movie theater. We have the details. And a middle school in Red Deer is locked down during a firearms scare.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening, thanks so much for joining us. The movie, which is stirring up a lot of controversy in Canada, may be coming to Lethbridge. The pro-life film Unplanned, which is based on the memoir of Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood director turned pro-life advocate, may soon be seen at the movie mill. The theater's owner, Len Binning, had made the decision to play the film, but after receiving a lot of negative online backlash, he may have had a change of heart.
And an immediate avalanche of online activity, both social media. Most of the social media has been negative. You have your keyboard warriors who, with their degree of anonymity, will say what they wish, and they're, shouting from the rooftops that we do not support women's rights, we do not support abortion rights. That couldn't be further from the truth, and that's not what we're about. We play a lot of controversial films. Hollywood is about controversy. We've played a number of religious films. Breakthrough, Fireproof, Courageous, Meet the Mormons. There's never been a discussion about that. If you don't want to go see it, you don't go see it. You realize it's a religious film. You know what's going to be preached. You avoid it. I believe this has become an issue of free speech. And we simply want to be that venue that will tell both sides of either story. Historically, we have advertised for both sides of the abortion debate, the pro and the against, and we don't choose sides. I mean, we're simply a small business trying to do the best that we can for our community, and now we're really quite taken back by the negative backlash, the negative reviews, the negative connotations, the almost threats, the number of emails of people saying, I'll never darken your doors again, I'll talk to all of my friends, they'll never do the same, you're an appalling piece of trash, you're a gargoyle, you're this, you're that, and it's really unfortunate. On the other hand, though, there's been a wave of positive responses too, and so we're really, I guess, confused at the moment as to how to proceed.
Binning says that if he does play the movie, it will be in collaboration with the local churches. Theaters in New Brunswick and Newfoundland and Labrador will be showing the movie beginning next month. The filmmakers are hoping to see Unplanned shown in between 100 and 200 theaters. Until now, Canada's first public screening was at the Edmonton Expo Centre on May 14th. That event was hosted by Harvest Ministries International. Pro-life advocates say Unplanned will have a powerful effect on young people who are often only shown the pro-choice side of an abortion issue. A blast from the past will be returning to Alberta. High River Town Council has given the go-ahead to members of the River City Classics Car Club to open a drive-in movie theater in the town. Jeff Langford, along with Roger Hamill and Wes Shaw, have already purchased the mobile high-tech projector and an FM transmitter. They are now working on a location and getting a big screen. The site would potentially accommodate around 200 vehicles. The club does not expect to make a lot of money from the venture. Hamill says the idea is to open the drive-in to charities to host, with half of the money going to nonprofits. The other half will pay for the equipment and improvements to the site. High River's Mayor Craig Snodgrass hopes the new drive-in will help drive more economic activity to the area. The group hopes to begin playing movies next month. Good news for members of the Blood Tribe today. The band received news from the Federal Court of Canada in regards to the size of their land. The court said that Canada was in breach of the TLE formula in the Blackfoot Treaty of 1877 in regards to the size of the Blood Reserve. The Blood Tribe was entitled to a reserve of 710 square miles, whereas the current reserve is just 547.5 square miles. Canada is liable to the Blood Tribe for the breach of the treaty. The big claim was first filed in federal court back in 1980. In a release, the Blood Tribe Council thanked the many people, including the elders, who supported this claim throughout the years. If your passion is astronomy, you're in for a big treat. Tonight is the best night of the year to check out the largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter. It'll be visible to the naked eye since it'll be the closest point to the Earth this year.
Jupiter's orbit about the Sun is almost 12 years, so a lot longer than the Earth. And throughout that year, it's an elliptical orbit, as is the Earth's. We change distance from it. And right now, we're really close. The closest we'll be for a while to Jupiter. So It'll rise a little bit before 9:30 tonight in the southeast. It'll stay in the sky about almost all night, setting just around 7 o'clock, I think. And it'll be the brightest thing in that area of the sky.
Spencer says Jupiter begins to rise in the southeast around 9:30 p.m. this evening. He says waiting until Jupiter rises in the sky will help with visibility. Musket firing, horseshoe tossing, and fiddling. These are some of the unique sights and sounds that will be abuzz this weekend at Fort Whoop-Up. The historical site will be holding 2 back-to-back activities this weekend, such as a Trader Days fundraiser Saturday night, and as well festivities for Father's Day on Sunday.
Father's Day weekend is one of our really exciting events for the community. We're going to be having a number of activities that fathers and caregivers of all kinds can come and participate with their children in. We're going to be having buffalo chip frisbee tossing events. We're going to be having a horseshoe tossing event as well, where kids can participate with their fathers and caregivers. We are also going to be having balloon shaving contests, which will be very fun. It's always very surprising when you're in the middle of shaving a balloon and boom, it just goes off in your face. It's great.
Saturday night from 6 to 9 on June 15th, we're going to be doing Trader Day down here at the beautiful Fort Whoop-Up. It's our way of showing what things were like back in the 1800s or late 1800s, where we're going to have some demonstrations done by the Black Powder Society, where they're going to be doing some demonstrations with some muskets and rifles and that, which is going to be really, really cool down here. We also have a wonderful Métis fiddler coming down with a band. His name's Phil Lethbridge. He's from Pincher Creek, and he does some great music, gets everybody up dancing. Our chef that we have here, Chef Michael, is going to be doing up a bison chili for us. So that's included in the ticket price. And as well, we do have a cash bar going on too.
Tickets to the Trader Day fundraiser on Saturday night are $25. They're available at Fort Whoop-Up and the Galt Museum. All of the proceeds will go back into the operating costs for the fort. The Sweet Inspiration Gospel Choir will be performing 7:30 tonight at the Southminster United Church. Now, jazz vocalist Don Pemberton will be backed up by a choir comprised of talented Lethbridge singers.
Tonight at Southminster United Church, as part of the Lethbridge Jazz and Blues Festival, it's going to be a fantastic jazz concert with a gospel choir. The gospel choir is made up of community members who've come together just to practice 3 times to get ready for the arrival of Dawn Pemberton, who's our guest artist from Vancouver, and she's fantastic. She's full of joy and full of soul as she sings, and the choir's right behind her. We're accompanied by a great band, full band, and we're going to be singing a variety of gospel music, some of it more traditional, some of it more Stevie Wonder type. And if people come, they can expect just to have their souls open up and to leave with a smile on their face, because the music is fabulous.
There was a scare at Eastview Middle School in Red Deer yesterday after police received a call about 3 youths who entered the school with a firearm. The incident happened around 3:30 p.m. on Tuesday. As a result, the school was put into immediate lockdown. RCMP cleared the building and the suspects fled. 2 of the 3 were apprehended and charged with firearms-related offenses. A replica firearm was later located. Fortunately, there were no injuries, but police need our help locating the 3rd suspect. If you have any information about this case, call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. A family in Calgary is in shock after their 4-year-old boy was cut by disposable razor blades wedged into a playground slide. Jillian Webster says her son James suffered minor injuries, which fortunately did not require any stitches. Police say the blades were removed before officers arrived and no security cameras are in the area. Investigators in Calgary are asking for the public's help in the case. More than $2 million in drugs and cash were seized, and more than 12 people were arrested as police busted a huge drug ring between Alberta and BC. The investigation, called Project Elder, was led by Alert and lasted 2 years. Alert says the drugs were being shipped to Calgary and Edmonton with further distribution points across the province. 2 homes, 2 businesses, and many vehicles were seized and searched. Police confiscated cocaine, methamphetamines, fentanyl, and a handgun. The drugs alone had a street value of more than $1.5 million. Police want to remind us, if we see any drug or gang-related activity in our neighborhoods, to call Crime Stoppers right away. A municipal district north of Edmonton has been fined $300,000 for breaking a federal environmental law. Athabasca County pleaded guilty to violating wildlife area regulations of the Canada Wildlife Act. It says the county cut and burned trees in the Minook Wildlife Area 2 years ago. The region, located 140 kilometers north of Edmonton, is in the transition zone between boreal forest and aspen parkland. The fine is to be paid to the federal government's Environmental Damages Fund. Drought in many parts of Saskatchewan is causing serious problems for farmers. Environment Canada says at least 200 millimeters of rain is desperately needed in the southern regions of the province. Saskatoon and Moose Jaw have also had the driest spring ever recorded. Other parts of the province are also dry. Swift Current and North Battleford experienced its third driest spring, while the city of Regina is also suffering from major drought. An expert panel is calling for Ottawa to work with the provinces and territories to create a single-payer pharmacare plan to cover every Canadian. Healthcare Minister Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor says the feds are committed to implementing a plan with federal funding, but it will have to be in conjunction with the provinces. Ontario's former Health Minister Eric Hoskins released his findings in Ottawa.
And we're recommending that the federal government partner in strong collaboration with provinces and territories to create and deliver a national pharmacare program that embodies those same principles as Medicare, our universal health care system. Those same principles of universality, comprehensiveness, accessibility, portability.
A story that we recently had on BCN is how the federal Liberals are wanting to eliminate single-use plastics over the next couple of years. That would include items like straws, plastic bags, and plastic water bottles. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says we need to look more into Tetra Paks. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, says Tetra Paks may not be the best option since they may be difficult to recycle.
They're not overly recyclable, but some companies have started marketing water in them, and they claim that, well, it's mostly paper, it's 74% paper, so it's good. Yeah, but it's also 74% paper, 6% aluminum, and what does that leave us? 20% plastic.
Watch the full interview with Mr. Lilly after business news, as he also discusses the major issues PM Trudeau has with our Conservative premiers. A Canadian soldier from World War I was laid to rest today with full military honors. Private George Alfred Newburn was just 18 years old when he was killed in 1917 during the Battle of Hill 70 in France. Newburn enlisted in Victoria, BC, and was a member of the 7th Canadian Infantry Battalion, a unit perpetuated by the British Columbia Regiment of Vancouver, BC. Newburn was born in 1899 in London, England. He and his family immigrated to BC in his youth. Private Newburn was only 16 years of age when he enlisted in 1915. Close to 2,100 Canadians gave their lives in the battle, more than 1,300 of whom have no known grave. Ted Byfield is a veteran Conservative journalist. He is the editor of the 12-volume history series, The Christians, Their First 2,000 Years. Mr. Byfield says when it comes to Christianity, there needs to be more teaching of the faith around the world, especially in Asia.
As usual, Christians are under severe persecution, but that always seems to precede a major gain in Christianity. When Constantine approved Christianity, he said, as I mentioned, but they're our best people, why are we persecuting them? The Chinese are finding this, though, too. They're honest, for one thing. So what they're trying to figure out now is how do we get their morality without getting their religion? Not possible.
Mr. Byfield will also discuss why Christianity is waning in the West. That interview is coming up in the second half of our show. The Southern Baptist Convention is open with a national meeting that will be dominated by discussion of a large-scale sex abuse crisis. Delegates are expected to adopt new abuse prevention measures to protect the most vulnerable.
You know, I think it's hard to tell how many people have been abused in Southern Baptist churches. Houston Chronicle did a report, talking about hundreds of them. But abuse is one of the most underreported crimes. And so I think there's many more that we have yet to hear about, and that we're only going to continue to hear more of those stories.
Police in Hong Kong used tear gas against protesters who oppose a contentious extradition bill. Wednesday's protests delayed a debate over the legislative proposal that would allow criminal suspects to be extradited to mainland China.
係林鄭下台，同埋係要撤回呢一個嘅修訂逃犯條例嘅一條條例，因為咧我哋即係都係街工咧，都係基層勞工嘅團體啦。咁其實咧就好多嘅勞工基層咧，其實都想出嚟嘅，不過咧就住而家嗰個罷工法嗰方面咧，其實就唔方便出嚟。咁我哋咧就優先就即係嚟咗呢一個現場先。咁我估計咧，其實晚上即係放工時間咧，亦都係多打工仔女咧係出嚟去反對呢一個惡法嘅。
A man has been charged in relation to the shooting of retired Boston Red Sox star David Ortiz. It is believed Felix Garcia was driving his motorcycle carrying the gunman who shot Ortiz in a bar in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic on Sunday night. It was on this day that U.S. President Ronald Reagan demands the tearing down of the Berlin Wall and the Baseball Hall of Fame opens. This is Today in History for June the 12th.
June 12, 1987. In the then divided city of Berlin, President Ronald Reagan makes a Cold War challenge to Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
More than 2 years later, the Berlin Wall falls as communism collapses across Eastern Europe. 1963. Civil rights activist Medgar Evers is gunned down in front of his home in Jackson, Mississippi. White supremacist Byron Della Beckwith is charged with murdering Evers, but he's not convicted until a third trial in 1994. Beckwith then receives a life sentence and dies behind bars in 2001. 1994. O.J. Simpson's ex-wife Nicole and Ronald Goldman are murdered in Los Angeles. Simpson is later acquitted of the murders in a high-profile criminal trial. But the former football star is ordered to pay millions in damages to the victims' families in a separate civil trial. 1978. In New York City, David Berkowitz gets 25 years to life in prison for each of the 6 Son of Sam killings that terrified the Big Apple. And 1939.
You know, to me, this is just like an anniversary myself.
Baseball great Babe Ruth is on hand as the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum is dedicated in Cooperstown, New York. Today in History, June 12th. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
A sunny and hot day in the Windy City again today, but some showers are on the way. Complete weather details are coming up. Lots of sunshine and hot again today. Tonight, a few clouds are rolling in with a low near 13. Tomorrow, a 30% chance of showers and a high near 30. Friday, the mercury will drop to around 15 with rain. The showers should clear out on Saturday, bringing a mainly sunny sky and a high near 24. A low-pressure system returns on Sunday, bringing more clouds, showers, and a high near 24 again. Rain at 21 degrees for Monday. Showers at 19 degrees on Tuesday. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 22 and an average low of 8. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1959 at 33 degrees, and the record low was +1 in 1999. Sunrise was at 5:24, sunset at 9:39. Looking at tomorrow's national forecast now, Victoria will be mainly sunny at 25, just a few clouds at 23 is expected in Vancouver. A chance of rain at 24 for Calgary. Thunder, showers, and 22 is in the forecast for Edmonton on Thursday. Showers and 29 degrees for Regina. A good chance of rain at 26 for Saskatoon tomorrow. Partly cloudy and 25 for Winnipeg. Expect thunder showers and 18 for Toronto. Ottawa should also receive some rain and get up to 19 degrees. Montreal may receive light showers and 19 as well. Overcast and 22 in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Mainly cloudy and 23 for both Halifax, Nova Scotia and Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect a mixture of sun and cloud and a high near 18 degrees for tomorrow. The federal government has rejected most of the amendments to Bill C-69, or as Premier Jason Kenney refers to it, the anti-pipeline bill. The Trudeau Liberals accepted some of the Senate changes to the environmental assessment overhaul legislation, but rejected 90% of those proposed by Conservative parliamentarians. The legislation will now be sent back to the Senate, which must accept the Liberal government's changes if the legislation is to be passed into law. Energy ministers from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario are each providing statements regarding the federal decision on Bill C-69, and we'll have that for you when they come in. Tim Hortons has added vegetarian sausage breakfast sandwiches to the menu at all 4,000 outlets across Canada. The coffee and donut chain says Canadians are hungry to try the sandwiches made with Beyond Meat patties, which are 100% plant-based. Burger chain A&W started offering Beyond Meat products on its menu last summer. Beyond Meat CEO Ethan Brown says the new breakfast sausage not only tastes great, but comes with added environmental benefits of plant-based protein. Root says its first quarter sales were up to $54.4 million, which is an increase of 6.5% from a year ago. The clothing company, however, says its loss for the quarter widened to $9.8 million, which was 75% higher than its first quarter last year. Its adjusted net loss was equal to 17 cents per share. Root says it remains on track to achieve its fiscal 2019 financial targets. That includes adjusted net income of between $20 and $24 million. Almost 4,000 WestJet flight attendants are now unionized. The Canadian Union of Public Employees confirmed it has been certified to represent 170 flight attendants at WestJet's low-cost subsidiary, Swoop. The union was previously certified by the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to represent flight attendants at WestJet and its Encore regional carrier. CUPE is Canada's largest union with 680,000 members, including 15,000 flight attendants. Bell is apologizing for several thousand Fibe customers for an outage during the final 30 seconds of Game 5 of the NBA Finals between the Raptors and the Golden State Warriors. A company spokesperson says many customers affected by the outage will be offered goodwill credits. Toronto Raptors fans took to social media to fume over the glitch that occurred as their team trailed the Warriors by just a single point. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the owner of the movie mill, Len Binning, is considering bringing the controversial pro-life film Unplanned to his theater here in Lethbridge. At this point, Binning is looking at teaming up with a church to show the film based on the life of Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood director turned pro-life advocate. The film is slated to open in theaters next month in both New Brunswick and Newfoundland and Labrador. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says many of Canada's Conservative premiers are not on board when it comes to national unity. Journalist Brian Lilly has details next. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Rehoboth Christian Ministries will host their annual pork roast Friday, June 14th at the Rehoboth Garden Center in Coaldale. This is a come-and-go supper, which will be served from 5 to 7 p.m. Supper includes roast pork, roast beef, potatoes, salads, and dessert. Cost is by donation. For more details, call 403-345-5199. Kick off your summer with Alberta Blue Cross and Silverberg Group's Street Eats Festival on Saturday, June 15th, beginning at 11 a.m. at the NMAX Center parking lot. Enjoy delicious and unique food truck cuisines, a kid zone, entertainment, and an eating contest. This event is in support of Lethbridge Family Services. For more information, visit lfsfamily.ca. Devil's Coulee Dinosaur and Heritage Museum, located in Warner, Alberta, is now open until September 2nd. Take a tour of the Dinosaur Gallery, heritage exhibits, and military displays. Visit Charlie the Baby Dinosaur, dig in a simulated bone bed, and see an actual nesting site. For more information, visit devilcoulee.com. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Many here in the West are still quite upset at the anti-energy bills, C-69 and C-48. In fact, 6 premiers, including UCP leader Jason Kenney, wrote a letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying the bills in their original form threaten national unity. To talk more about this is our political reporter, Brian Lilly, who joins me now from Toronto. Brian, Trudeau went on record saying anyone that plays with national unity is not fit for higher office. Was there not a time when he said he would back Quebec separating when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister?
Absolutely, and it's not that long ago, Hal, but just to back this up a little bit, we're talking about the premiers of 5 provinces, plus a territory. They'll represent 59% of the population, 63% of Canada's GDP. We're talking the premiers of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, and the Northwest Territories, all of them writing to say, hey, look, C-48 and C-69, unless you accept the Senate amendments, are bad bills. They will hurt our economies. We need you to consider the Senate amendments. And of course, the Senate amendments were passed by the independent senators that Justin Trudeau appointed, but he doesn't want to take all of their amendments. And by the way, the independent senators that Justin Trudeau appointed, I just want to remind people, vote more in line with the Trudeau Liberals than Liberal senators do, like 95% of the time. So he should be listening. He should be willing to say we're going to change it, but he's not. And instead, he lashes out and says, if you're going to play national unity games, because the premier's rightly pointed out, if you start blocking natural resources out of Western Canada, it will hurt national unity. He says you're playing national unity games. Well, back in 2012, not that long ago, yes, it's 7 years ago, but by this point, Justin Trudeau was already an MP for almost 4 years now. He was just about to become Liberal Party leader. He became Liberal Party leader a year later. And he was saying that if Stephen Harper was still Prime Minister and things were changing in the wrong direction, becoming too conservative in Canada for him, he would think about voting yes for Quebec to separate. Wait a minute, hasn't he just disqualified himself from higher office? I've been calling him Captain Stumbles over the past couple of days over several gaffes that he's made. And this one, he is denouncing himself while denouncing the premiers. And by the way, I want to point out, the premiers said this will hurt national unity. None of them, to my knowledge, and I honestly don't know the premier of the Northwest Territories, but I can tell you that I have never heard Jason Kennedy, Scott Moe, Brian Pallister, Doug Ford, or Blaine Higgs out in New Brunswick say, I'm going to vote for separating if I don't get my way. They've never said that. Only one person in this conversation I can tell you has, and his name is Justin Trudeau.
Our Prime Minister announced recently that he accepted the term genocide from the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Report. Brian, that comment may have landed our PM in hot water, and many disagree, calling it a genocide.
Yeah, Andrew Scheer, the Conservative leader, disagrees. The several prominent former Liberal cabinet ministers, Irwin Cotler, former Attorney General, Ujjal Dosanjh, former British Columbia Premier, former Federal Health Minister under Paul Martin, he disagrees with it being called a genocide. The Toronto Star, I want to point out that the Toronto Star, a very Liberal-friendly paper, said, look, we can all agree that lots of bad things happen, but the word genocide does not apply here. Maybe we need a different word for what happened, but genocide isn't it. Justin Trudeau, though, has decided that he would plead guilty for all of Canada, and that has prompted the Organization of the American States, an organization that encompasses basically the 34 nation states of North and South America, to say, oh, you've just admitted to genocide? We need to do our own investigation. So now we've got an international investigation into whether Canada is guilty of genocide.
Wow. Trudeau had an interesting stumble during a recent interview discussing his ban on single-use plastics. Brian, he had a tough time answering a reporter's question when asked about ways he and his family reduce their plastics use. Let's have a look.
And what do you and your family do to cut back on plastics?
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of water out of when we have water bottles out of a plastic, away from plastic towards paper, like drink box water bottles sort of things.
Brian, it looked like our Prime Minister was grasping for straws.
Grasping for straws or paper, like drink box water bottles sort of things. They're called Tetra Paks, Justin. They've been around a long time. And now, so we all know Tetra Paks, the little juice boxes you give to your kids. Wine can come in them, for the adult beverages. They're not overly recyclable, but some companies have started marketing water in them. And they claim that, well, it's mostly paper. It's 74% paper, so it's good. Yeah, but it's also 74% paper, 6% aluminum, and what does that leave us? 20% plastic. To be able to break these down, the water companies, by the way, don't call them Tetra Paks because that has a bad connotation because they're incredibly hard to recycle, but they are effectively Tetra Paks. To be able to peel apart the cardboard from the plastic, from the aluminum, and break them up into different components that can be recycled takes an incredible amount of energy. This makes it very impractical and economically infeasible in many cases to recycle these things. There's a lot of municipalities that will not take them and say, no, that goes in the garbage. We are not even going to try and recycle them. I can tell you that the LCBO, Ontario's liquor store, the largest purchaser of beverage alcohol in the world, pushed back against several major winemakers when they wanted to start moving from glass bottle to Tetra Paks because they said, no, we've got a good thing going here with being able to recycle glass. We can't deal with this. It's not feasible. But the companies marketing this water have made it seem trendy. They've made it seem cool. And people like Justin Trudeau have bought into it. Maybe it's better than the glass bottles that he used to have trucked into his family's home at Rideau Cottage. He doesn't live at 24 Sussex. He lives across the street. When he became Prime Minister, I've got a copy of an access to information request where the National Capital Commission said we must supply the Prime Minister's family with water in glass bottles. Apparently, he hasn't heard of a couple of simple things that I use. They're called the tap. And if you don't like tap water, there's this other thing called a Brita. And, it filters the water and you put it in your fridge and you refill it when it's empty. But the Prime Minister apparently doesn't like those.
Or, when we were kids riding our bikes, we'd go home and just turn on the hose, right? Just drink from the hose.
I may have done that.
Yeah, that's right. We may have. Now, recent polls are showing the Green Party is gaining some momentum at the expense of the Liberals and the NDP.
And that's why I think this plastics ban proposal has come in. There's no legislation behind this. They want to use the Canadian Environmental Protection Act to bring in this single-use plastics ban. But they didn't really bring in any legislation. They didn't bring in any amendments to the legislation. There's no details. So I think they're looking and saying, okay, we're down in the polls. We are only a few months away from the election. And the Green Party is coming up. Now, this is a poll that I wrote about from a company called Campaign Research. And their top line numbers are 35% of voters say they would back the Conservatives. 32% would back the Liberals. Now, smart viewers will say, oh, that sounds like within the margin of error. Absolutely. Well, what's happening for the other two parties? Well, the NDP has dropped down to 14% support in this poll by Campaign Research, but the Greens have come up to 12. And then more concerning for the Liberals is that while the Conservative vote is solid and the overwhelming majority of people that say they're leaning to the Conservatives say they will not even consider another party, among the three progressive parties, the Bloc, not the Bloc, they're only in Quebec, but the Greens, the NDP, and the Liberals, they're all saying, yeah, I'll consider somebody else. About half of Liberal voters say they would consider somebody else. The same for the Greens and the NDP. So Justin Trudeau knows if he wants a shot, he's got to do something to get those Green voters back into his tent. And that's why I think this plastics ban, look, we all need to use less plastics. I'm always outraged by overpackaging. We can always do a better job. But what he's proposing and calling it science-based, it's more about politics and optics than it is about science and the environment.
In the last election, the Liberals made promises on the issue of gun control. Brian, they're now making more noise about potentially banning one of the most popular rifles in Canada.
Yeah, this is a rifle that has a bad rap. Yes, it has been used in an awful lot of mass shootings in the United States, but in Canada, it's been around for 50-odd years or so. There are, depending on which RCMP, both of these numbers come from the RCMP, between 66 and 86,000. That number is a year or two old. Over the last several weeks, as there's been talk about banning the AR-15, literally thousands more have been sold as people say, I want to make sure that I can buy this gun while it's still legal. Cabela's across the country have actually been sold out. They're one of the major retailers. Other retailers have been sold out. And why are the Liberals going to try and ban the AR-15? Again, because it has a bad rap. But consider this, Hal. you take the high number or the low number, 66,000 or 86,000. I keep asking people, show me the crime spree in Canada created by the AR-15 rifle. You can't find one. There was one mob hit that went the wrong way that the AR-15 was used in. That's one. You've still got between 66 and 86,000 law-abiding gun owners. The mobsters aren't buying their guns at your local Canadian Tire. They're not going to your local gun shop. They're buying them on the black market. And they will continue to do that even if you ban them. Why? Why do we know that? Because we always find them with other banned guns when they're arrested. So the Liberals want to make this into a wedge issue. They're convinced that they can get suburban mothers to say, I'm scared about guns. This one is, it's black. It looks scary. It's not like Grandpa's hunting gun. It's not even as strong as Grandpa's hunting gun, but it's black polymer. It's not a wood gun. So people say it looks scary. They want to ban it, and they're going to do it on emotion and then try and make that into a wedge issue against the Conservatives for the election campaign.
On the international stage, agriculture producers are still having to deal with the Chinese ban on canola, peas, and soy. Our pork and beef producers are also not happy with China right now. What's the latest?
The latest is that they continue to face more inspections, and the government hasn't solved this. We talked about this last week, that all of a sudden beef producers were added on top of canola, on top of soy, on top of peas, on top of pork. And now we've got beef. Brian Mulroney, former Progressive Conservative Prime Minister, he was in Toronto about a week ago. He was receiving an award from the Canadian Club. And while he's there, he made a comment that maybe Justin Trudeau should be sending Jean Chrétien to China. Mulroney doesn't have great relations with China. I'm not saying he has bad ones, but Jean Chrétien, after he left office, did an awful lot of business as a consultant, as a lawyer, with companies trying to set up shop in China. And he had a decent relationship with the people in Beijing when he was prime minister. So Mulroney said, Justin Trudeau should send Chrétien as a special envoy. Chrétien then jumped up and said, yeah, I'd be game for that. I'd be willing to go. As far as we know at this point, publicly, they have not announced that Justin Trudeau has asked Jean Chrétien to do it. He could have done it this past Monday night. It was John Turner, former Prime Minister John Turner's 90th birthday. Chrétien was there. Mulroney was there. Turner was there. Trudeau was there. He could have just walked across to 2 tables over and said, hey, Jean, can you help a guy out? Can you help your country out? Chrétien said he's willing to do it. He just needs the government to actually say, we want you to do it. So far, they haven't.
Wow. The Toronto Raptors lead the NBA Finals 3-2, Brian. They're so close to bringing the city its first championship since the 1993 Blue Jays. Now, you're in Toronto. What is the Raptors' run doing to the city? And do you think Leonard, Lowry, and co. can close it out?
I believe they can close it out. I believe they can do it Thursday night in Oakland. I want to see them make those fans leave the Oracle Center early like they did in the last 2 games down in Oakland, and make that the last game ever played at the Oracle Center, because the Golden State Warriors are leaving. They're going to San Francisco. So I think they can. Let me tell you, Hal, it has been electrifying this city. I'm old enough to remember the Blue Jays' 93 win. It was amazing. It was electrifying. This is just like that. No Canadian team has won a major sporting event. I don't count Toronto FC winning the Major League Soccer trophy. I don't count that. But, we're talking baseball, hockey, and basketball. Our football leagues are separate. We haven't won since 93. The Habs won the Stanley Cup in the spring of 93. In the fall of 93, the Blue Jays won the World Series. Since that, not a single Canadian team across the country has won one of these intercontinental trophies, and the Raptors have a chance to do it. They didn't do it. They came so close on Monday night. It was heartbreaking. I was ready to head out into the streets and start partying, and I ended up having to sit there crying in my beer.
A lot of actually Golden State fans were crying when they saw Kevin Durant go down with his Achilles injury, and some people were blasting Toronto fans saying, you guys were cheering when our All-Star went down, but that's not necessarily the case of what happened, right?
So initially, yeah, there were some cheers, and then as soon as people figured out that Durant was actually injured, they stopped. Part of it, from the Raptors themselves, Kyle Lowry, Serge Ibaka, tamping things down and saying, hey, hey, and they're waving their hands down saying, stop this, stop this. And people stopped and they applauded him as he got up to get off the court. I talked to, I've got some friends that were in the game and they said, it's a little overblown. Maybe what you saw on TV was different, but he said, a couple of people I talked to said, yeah, of course, your opponent's best player goes down. Your initial reaction is, yeah, oh, hey, we got an extra shot. But as soon as people figured out that he was injured, they're not going to cheer an injury. This isn't Hamilton playing football. As I can attest, and as you can attest going to Ticat games, you could tell us that we were being classless at the old Iberwin Stadium. We'd still cheer on somebody getting an injury. That was not the case at the Raptors game on Monday night.
Fingers crossed, go Raptors go. They can bring Canada another championship. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, joining me from Toronto. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you, Hal.
Christianity has been around for over 2,000 years now, but how much does the average person really know about its history? Does it even matter? Joining me now from Edmonton is Ted Byfield, a well-known conservative Canadian journalist who founded the Alberta Report, BC Report, and the Western Report news magazines. He's also the general editor of the 12-volume history series, The Christians, Their First 2,000 Years. Ted, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much. I feel very welcome to be there.
How much does the average Canadian Christian really know about the history of Christianity, Ted?
Close to nothing, but then it's also true that he knows very little about the history of anything else. The subject has been terribly, what's the word? I guess you'd have to say downtrodden in the public school system, because the great philosopher of the modern school system, Dewey, thought that history was dangerous because it sets up hero figures, and we don't want people worshiping hero figures. So people don't know much of any history, least of all Christianity.
Now, can you give our viewers a brief look into how the Western world was influenced by Christianity?
Well, what happened was that there were three sort of sources of Christianity, I guess you could say. The religious source of it came from the ancient Jews. I mean, Christianity in that sense really is a Jewish religion. The legal part of it, the law and the respect for the law, came from the Romans, and the ideas of government came from the Greeks. And in the early Middle Ages, the Christian church put all three of those sources together, and it emerges in modern history as Western philosophy. This is the Western world, but its origins are those three. And the Christians, their role was to bring those three together and to make it into one general philosophy. And that's the one we've been operating on for the last maybe 300 years, until very recently when we began to throw it out.
Now tell me about the persecution of the early church and what it went through, and compared to today's persecution.
Well, first of all, the early church suffered persecution because it fell afoul of the Roman government. And they were pretty efficient on everything they did, but they couldn't wipe it out, and that bothered them because that meant there must be something here they didn't understand. And that misunderstanding went through 300 years of, the Christians went through nearly 300 years of active persecution until one emperor said, look, these are the best guys we've got. They're our best soldiers, they're our best citizens, they tell the truth, they take care of poor people. Why are we persecuting? We should be supporting them. And that was the great change in the 4th century, which ended the persecution by the Roman state. But whether we could say that modern persecution is the equivalent, there's two kinds of modern persecution going on. There's the kind that occurs some places in the Asian world, India occasionally, and in modern China, in which vast numbers of people are jailed, locked up, or killed. And then there's in our society, there's people call it persecution because we keep getting called names, bigots and all the rest of it. But, you know, sticks and stones will hurt my bones, but names will never hurt me. We make a big deal of it, but it's really a miscall to say what we're going through in persecution, because compared with other people's are going through and have gone through, this doesn't count as anything.
So Ted, let's look back on the Middle Ages and the Crusades. This is always a point of contention. Islam was advancing quickly. So how did the Christians respond to this? And was it even justified?
Well, first of all, Islam was expanded by the sword. Most of its acquisitions made beginning the 8th century and so on were made by conquering peoples and imposing a Muslim structure upon their government and their society. That offensive against Christianity has characterized Islam for many, many centuries. It's not new, and we seem to think of it as new. The Crusades were an attempt to recover by conquest what we'd lost by conquest through the Muslims. And they were, in effect, a counterattack. And they didn't quite work, you know. And they failed. In the end, the Muslim state was as powerful as ever. What is working against Islam, and always has, is the idea of mercy being demonstrated visibly and effectively by Christians towards other people. And that impresses Muslims, because there is at the heart of Muslims a very, very good thing. Their religion does not extol it sufficiently, but it's there. And I think all of us know Muslims who are horrified by some of the things the radical Muslims are doing. So we must be careful when we attack Islam, to be sure that we make that distinction, because a lot of Muslims they're just odd. I can't believe that they're doing their own people are doing these things. They have been doing them a long time, but they still don't like it. And those people are hurt more than the persecuted, in a way, you know. They hate to see their religion being made into this.
Ted, let's talk about the Reformation years. Now we think of Martin Luther and John Calvin. What were the major issues of the Reformation?
Well, the central issue was what's the authority behind the church? Who can say this is Christian and have some be able to justify that statement? And is the church expressed in the Bible? Yes. Is the Bible the final authority? Some would say yes. Others would say it's a final authority, but not the only one. But the argument was, who's boss? That's always the argument. And that to the Catholics, the structure of the papacy was the essential authority. And to the Protestants, the work of the Holy Spirit within the souls of men was the essential authority. And in a way, it's too bad, because there are ways of bringing those two things together. Because we did not bring them together, we've gone through an awful lot of unnecessary pain, so that there's nothing that either side can boast about.
Now, certainly the Gutenberg press and the availability of the Bible in a language everyday people can understand must have had a very profound effect on the world. Let's talk a bit about that.
Well, that obviously did. There's no question about it. You see, the church was afraid of the Bible in a sense, because all kinds of weird constructs can be made out of the Bible, which they realized. So they kept the authority for the Bible, the interpretation of the Bible, in the papacy to prevent that from happening. But what they also prevented from happening was an awful lot of very good things that the Protestants had fulfilled, so that the unity of the church was never accomplished. And I think more in the last 25 years has been done towards bringing Protestants and Catholics together than what's happened since the Reformation. Why is it happening? Because secularism is taking over everything, and it doesn't like either one of us. So we're being thrust together by our foes, and that's a good thing.
How has Christianity really helped bring about democracy?
Christianity has ultimately regarded the individual person as the ultimate criterion of heaven or hell within that person. So that Christianity has always imposed, or rather assigned, a great importance to the individual person. This is very out of character today because the left in our political system continually divides us into groups. You know, I'm a white male, you're something else, something, and so on. Everybody has to have a group. And they believe the group is more important than the individual, and the Christian says no. And that difference, I think, defines the difference, our differences between governments and Christianity, which are arising. And as those differences arise, and we see ourselves being, you can't say persecuted, but we're certainly being penalized for our religion in various ways, this is pulling us together. So that I think maybe in the next 25 or 30 years, the issues will still be there on authority, but there'll be so many joint projects between the Catholics and Protestants that the difference between them is just beginning to disappear. I hope that, and pray. I think we should all be praying for that. Anyway.
And Ted, in the last century, it's been interesting to see how faith has waned in much of the West, but it seems to have exploded in many developing nations. Why do you think that is?
It's happened because of the philosophies underlying the West, which eroded our religions and still do. Those philosophies have never really been tried in Asia, for instance, in Africa, so that the thing that's new to them really is Christianity. So what we're seeing, and it's happened before, is a change in the Christian world. There was a time when the sort of center of Christian activity was in Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and then it changed gradually, and it went over to the United States and the Americas. I think it's changing now and going to Asia and Africa. And we may see if you had said in the, say, the 4th century, there's a little collection of mud huts on the bank of the Seine River, and they're calling it Paris. I would say, if someone were to say, yeah, but that's going to be the cultural capital of the world, they say, yeah, right. But the same thing could be going on. We could be looking at some place in Central Africa that becomes the center of our civilization. That's the center of civilization has tended to follow Christianity, or maybe Christianity has followed the center, but they stay together. And we're casting it aside now. And we'll lose our authority as we do it, our moral authority.
You know what I think is fascinating as well, Ted, is that when I was a kid growing up and attending Sunday school, I always heard stories of missionaries being sent to different countries in Africa, and now those same African nations are sending missionaries here to North America.
Correct, and that's happened that happened in Western Europe, for instance, and from the 6th to around the 11th century, missionaries from Ireland in particular and other barbarian places. Some unkind people think Ireland is still a barbarian place. I'm part Irish, so I can say that. But those Irish missionaries came back into Europe and reconverted it to Christianity. And a book came out about 10 years ago, How the Irish Saved Civilization. Well, it wasn't quite true, but it made for good reading for the Irish.
We'll bring that up again on St. Paddy's Day next year. Now, where do you see Christianity headed over the next couple of decades?
I think there'll be a transfer of central activity and authority from the modern Western nations to Africa and Asia. And I think the Christians, churches, maybe they'll be able to call themselves a Christian church again by that, will come forward very, very rapidly in those parts of the world. And when they do, that will change the center of civilization with it. We won't see it, but our grandchildren might see the beginning of it. Well, we're seeing it now. China's coming on economically. And as usual, Christians are under severe persecution, but that always seems to precede a major gain in Christianity. When Constantine approved Christianity, he said, as I mentioned, but they're our best people. Why are we persecuting them? The Chinese are finding this, though, too. They're honest, for one thing. So what they're trying to figure out now is how do we get their morality without getting their religion? Not possible.
So, Ted, in your opinion, how can the church in Western civilization become more relevant and more of a bright, shining light in a dark world?
I think the main thing that we've got to do is to teach the faith better than we have been doing it, as people learn the history of Christianity, and as people learn its current problems and the fights we're now going through. We've been going through conflict ever since the first century. But as people come to absorb that, they get taken up by it, and you'll see a swing back even in our society towards Christianity. But as I said, the center will be elsewhere.
Interesting. Ted Byfield, the general editor of the 12-volume history series, The Christians, Their First 2,000 Years. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you for the opportunity of talking to you about it.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.